Got to be Wastelanders! Welcome aboard the Lost Holotapes vertibird. Here we saw through the wastelands of the Fallout universe, delving into the intricacies of faction, histories and settlements. Today we will continue discussing fan-made narrative mods and take a look at a very solid mod, Battle for South, which tells the tale of the Legion's seizure of territories in southern Vegas and how the NCR later liberated these territories. After playing through this mod, I've come to believe that the original Fallout New Vegas missed out on numerous opportunities to explore the potential of the NCR-Legion conflict in the Mojave wasteland. Don't forget to subscribe, leave likes and comments. For now, this is the best support you can give to the project. Also, if you're new to the channel, I recommend starting with the holotapes from the first episode, as the narrative is sequential. It's crucial to watch the previous episode where I discussed the specifics of working with fan-made mods, and be sure to check the description, you can find links to download mods to play before the corresponding holotapes are released. Now climb aboard the shuttle, we are heading to Canonical Cove. The mod was created by modder All Things Trivial in 2020, so it's quite fresh. For some unclear reason, it's in the E tier despite having just over 100 endorsements and the conversion rate slightly above 5%. As I mentioned earlier, the mod directly explores the military confrontation between the Legion and the NCR, and does so quite successfully. We've shown the Legion's capture of southern Mojave territories, ferrying their troops across Cottonwood Cove and establishing outposts, and the difficulty the NCR faces in pushing them back. Remember Sergeant Astor's quest where he asked to drop a radioactive barrel on Cottonwood Cove, as if it was not the main forward outpost of the mighty Legion, but rather a few cardboard boxes where a homeless jackal slept by the fire. Imagine if this quest opens up an actual southern front, a full-scale invasion and counterattack culminating in the barrel drop. That's exactly what this mod is about. However, I must admit that the mod is not without its problems. Perhaps the main drawback paradoxically becomes the presence of a very long mandatory sidelines, which detract too much attention from the main narrative and stray too far from it. At some point you start asking yourself, why did I even come here? Quite representative here is a subplot of the Legion's attempt to establish a base at Searchlight Airport, for which they make contact with the Steelworks factory, whose director needs stolen documents returned, for which the thief needs help with the raid on an NCR post office. But to talk to the director, you first need to complete the secretary's quest, who needs to deal with the contractor, who in turn needs to deal with the foreman. Perhaps this is what influenced the final ratings. Although I would be very skeptical of mod ratings of Fallout New Vegas released after 2015 due to the release of Fallout 4. The second biggest drawback of the mod, in my opinion, is the lack of voice acting. I've played mods without voice acting, and this is the first one where this shortcoming significantly impacts the game's quality. Yes, voice acting is not always easy, and a poorly voiced character can ruin the immersion, but in the absence of voice acting, there is no synchronization of dialect text with its reading speed. I suffered greatly when trying to record this mod for a video walkthrough because I had to not only read but also translate simultaneously, and I simply couldn't finish reading a line before it changed to the next one after 3 seconds, completely losing the thread of everything I said. So I had to abandon this endeavor. Still, bad voice acting is better than none at all. Let's move on to examining the lore, and we'll start with the exposition. One of the main innovations of the mod is the settlement of Searchlight, which was inhabited by people at least 25 years before the events, meaning after the year 2256. It is known that before 2281, the NCR established an outpost in the town. The mod develops this idea and tells us that NCR drove out the local residents because the location was very convenient for controlling the Legion's advancement. The residents didn't go too far, they founded the compound settlement on the southern border of Searchlight. They harbored a deep resentment towards the NCR, but also understood that it was better for them to be nearby in case of raider attacks, as they had no strength or fortifications of their own. Not all residents relocated to the compound. Many went to seek refuge elsewhere, including the cities of New Vegas. The settlement thrives on prospecting. When the sabotage occurred in Searchlight, the compound survived because it was just beyond the contaminated area. At this point I would use a rule I mentioned in the first video of fan-made mods, blending two mods to create a stronger story. In this case I'm referring to the Cal-Nev-Ari mod. The thing is, the compound and Cal-Nev-Ari are very close to each other, and the existence of both simultaneously creates a conflict. However, the Cal-Nev-Ari settlement as a concept turned out to be much more stronger than the compound. Firstly, it repurposes a pre-war town, which I really like. Secondly, it has pre-war buildings, which will likely be an important factor in choosing a settlement location in an emergency. Thirdly, the exposition of a city whose leadership sympathizes with the Legion is justified here by the fact that the residents were originally evicted from Searchlight by the NCR. And fourthly, the location of the compound relative to Searchlight is like Pripyat to Chernobyl, It's too close to the contaminated zone. It's not the kind of place where sane people would want to live. Overall, between choosing to cut Cal-Nev-Ari out of the narrative or adapt it, I choose the latter. We won't get much additional in terms of lore from the mod. After all, Cal-Nev-Ari as a mod falls into the category of additional settlements and isn't burdened with lore. Its current mayor sympathizes with the Legion, and the town is constantly terrorized by fire ants, which even recently burned down a house on the outskirts with the entire family inside. The mod's plot aspect is related to an assassination attempt on the mayor, plotted by some young residents in the sewers who don't want to be annexed by the Legion. Another plotline is associated with the corrupt NCR senator from the town of Modoc. To avoid conflict with the Battle for South, we won't accept any assassination attempts on the mayor. Let's continue with the topic of Searchlight. On the outskirts of the NCR outpost, a medical center was organized in a building with a pre-war system that locked the entrance door from the inside. Guards were always on duty outside, opening the doors. Let's call the base Maelstrom 20 by its radio call sign. The 3-story building on the outside, but 5-story on the inside and windowless, was also used as an administration and radio room. I won't even comment on the building's layout in terms of fire safety. When the sabotage occurred in Searchlight, the guards outside had their eyes gouged out and their insides spilled out through their mouths. In such a state, it was quite difficult for them to open the door from the outside, and everyone inside ended up locked in. Their troubles were just beginning. As it turned out, the building's attic was inhabited by Deathclaws, which could become invisible. Among the NCR corpses in the building, there are scattered notes, holotapes, and terminals describing all subsequent events. I must admit, this is a very cool horror-style reading, with specific characters and their survival stories. In a nutshell, Deathclaws from the attic began to descend downwards, capturing floor by floor, while NCR soldiers, with horror looking up the stairs, retreated even lower. Agony screams of those who failed to escape could be heard from the upper floors. 35 survivors found themselves in the infirmary on the first floor, where attempts were made to drag the wounded down the stairs, as well as to collect ammunition abandoned during the retreat. Failing in attempts to pick the lock, those who could went on a desperate attack upstairs, but were torn apart by mutants. The wounded in the infirmary became a pleasant desert for the reptiles. South of Nipton, the NCR organizes Outpost Station Oscar, mainly used as a communication headquarters. Perhaps from there soldiers went to Nipton at night to enjoy the company of courtesans. Also, NCR Colonel Deckard, leading the Cerberus special unit consisting of rangers and heavy infantry, organizes a base not far from the Legion's safe house and a field camp near the crushed Enclave vertebrate. Colonel Deckard will monitor the Legion's progress in the south and become the main thorn in the side. In Vegas, at the H&H Tools steel mill immediately after the war, New Vegas Steelworks emerged, founded by former Gullified employee of Anthony House, Conrad Jefferson. And why not? From the known lore, we only know about the concrete plant in Boulder City. Some local production of materials, especially steel, surely must have existed. In the region, the Duke's gang is active. Duke was mixing drugs for his subordinates, making them obedient lapdogs. Even one of his lieutenants ironically was called Bulldog. A raider named Priest once missed his dose and snapped out of his trip. Realizing what Duke was doing to his comrades, he attempted to overthrow him. Duke's loyal, brainwashed subordinates stood up for their boss. Killing 3 of them, Priest escaped while he could. Duke's crew eventually settles in the forests of Charleston Mountain near Silver Peak. An interesting point was that Priest was so wild and deranged that drugs were actually making him somewhat human-like, as he was the main perpetrator of dismemberment and cannibalism. But when he snapped out of his trip, his psyche stabilized and he remained in a normal state by civilized standards. He remembered his savagery but thought all these atrocities were committed because of drugs, thus blaming Duke for everything. In general, this could become an excellent basis for the central conflict for one of the side quests, which will eventually be implemented. Somewhere along Priest's wanderings, he was assaulted by an unnamed female raider, whom Priest chopped off the hands with his signature fire axe. The gang of this raider made him their new leader, and they continued to roam. Near Bonnie Springs, on the road to Red Rock Canyon, Priest organizes a hideout for his gang on the ruins of a pre-war settlement. If we use the pre-war map, this settlement is Blue Diamond, one of the rare pre-war settlements in Clark County not yet used in the lore. Interestingly, they founded the settlement before Bitter Springs massacre occurred in 2278 and allowed migrating Huns to settle in the canyon out of some sense of solidarity. Later they began to regret it because the Huns managed to stand on their feet and grow in power and drug business, while Priest's group stagnated. Some members of the Priest group wanted to burn the Huns as Red Rock Canyon was too small for 2 gangs. In early 2282, an unpleasant thing happens. Mercenaries with Securitrons attack and destroy Blue Diamond on Duke's orders, burning it to the ground and killing everyone. I want to introduce mercenaries as a separate faction. It's unnecessary burdening with poorly elaborated details since they lack exposition. Let the Duke's gang attack them for simplicity. In the Survivor's diaries and dialogues, this event is described in detail. Where everyone hid, how they experienced this event, what the smell of charred human flesh of their friends was like. It is precisely this level of exposition and saturation makes these events and the mod memorable. Nevertheless, 5 raiders, including priests, survive in the basement of one of the houses, which remained unnoticed by the attackers. Speaking of other raiders, it is worth noting the jackals who settled in the vacant Matthews farm. In Cal-Nev-Ari, a new resident arrives, Kyle McGinney, the brother of Louis McGinney, who was already living in the city. He receives support and patronage from the Irish diaspora in advancing through the ranks of the prospectors despite protests from their leader, Carter. She distrusts Kyle for a reason, as he spies on the city's activity and his brother in particular for a woman with a personal vendetta against Louis, pretending to be an NCR official. Nevertheless, Carter believed that having any contact with the NCR when the Legion is nearby is risky, because if the settlement is successfully captured, its fate will be no better than Nipton's. Wanting to secure the city after Kyle's appointment as leader of the Prospector Squad, she sends him with a group on a suicidal mission to Searchlight for weapons and to Maelstrom Station for medicine. The Prospectors managed to get inside the station but couldn't get out and became dinner for the Deathclaws. The Prospectors in Searchlight gullified and went feral. Another thing I liked about the mod is the mention of Camp Willow on the eastern bank of the Colorado River. This is nice because Willow is a legacy of unfairly cut content from the original Fallout New Vegas, and I love it when such things are brought back into the narrative. Speaking about cut content, from the lore of this mod I will allow myself to cut out some elements due to the weak development of exposition or plot associated with them. This includes the unfinished vault, where people live on the lower floors and ghouls lived on the upper floors, having gone feral and blocking the passage to the surface for humans. We will also cut out the Underground, an underground club located on the outskirts of Vegas, away from the hustle and bustle of the Strip, and the gang hanging out there led by someone named Michael. This gang will have minimal narrative significance, and the Underground will conflict with another cool mod location, which we will discuss next time. The Cazadors drug trafficking gang in Freeside will be cut out as well. Their entire plot revolves around making a deal with the Underground and dealing with the drunken NCR ranger who beat them. There is barely a place for a minor Slaggers gang, who wanted to resist the Cazadors, which were trying to subjugate his gang. We will also not consider the additional Legion camp on the eastern bank as it has no plot relevance. Moving on to the gameplay part of the mod. The NCR knows that the Legion is crossing the river using Cottonwood. The leadership makes an ambiguous decision. They want to allow the Legion to cross it to defeat them, taking advantage of the element of surprise and pulling more Legionnaires and their resources into the territory where it's easier for the NCR to fight. According to the mod's concept, a certain Sergeant Mac hires the courier to infiltrate the Legion as a double agent and help them, while also providing intelligence to the NCR and conducting periodic sabotage. The courier is also instructed to do whatever it takes to avoid being exposed. The courier teleports to Cottonwood and asks if there is any work available. That's how easily the Legion shakes hands with some random mercenary and sends them to carry out strategically important missions. I think it's obvious what kind of problem is there. I don't believe that the Legion would take in anyone they encounter and trust them with important tasks. However, I can understand why, again and again, actions will always be taken only by the courier under any pretext. This is the curse of conventionality, that the protagonist is always the same character, no matter what story you want to tell. And don't even blame fan mods for this. Official releases also fall into this stupid convention. Fallout 4 with its Nuka world and the need to ransack settlements after you personally establish them. Or even Fallout New Vegas itself with the situation where Caesar practically bows down to the courier asking for his help in defeating the NCR. So I wouldn't consider the influence of a certain protagonist here at all, and we'll look at the events from the perspective of the Iron Hearts 4 map. There's the Legion, there's the NCR. I also don't want to bother introducing a ton of Legion characters, as there's a very complex power structure and a lot of explanations about ranks, distribution of duties, and other functional details of the faction. I respect the depth with which the mod author delved into this topic, but it was very boring to read, and it has nothing to do with the development of the plot itself. So, the first move made by the Legion is sending a group of scouts to attack and capture Station Echo, which overlooks Cottonwood, or more precisely, to capture what remains of it, because the scouts use a suicide bomber. However, something from the station still remains after the explosion, and the Legion takes it under their control, hardly suspecting that there were only ghouls stationed for a reason. I'm glad about this event because Station Echo finally appears in the narrative. Having gotten rid of unnecessary ice, the Legion begins to move westward. They set their sights on Cal-Nev-Ari, which supports them slightly more than the NCR because of Searchlight, and which should become a foothold for further advancement of the Legion to the south. Using the example of the city and contrasting it with Nipton, the Legion wants to show Caesar's generosity and that cities can live and thrive if they join the Orange Empire. The Legion, through the conditional protagonist, helped find the dead prospectors groups and get supplies, so the city's mayor, Joseph Rourke, surrenders the city. But the capture doesn't happen without incident. Part of the settlers, under the leadership of Louis McGinney, take refuge in a bunker built in the basement of a pre-war house. This is another argument in favor of using Cal-Nev-Ari, because in the original settlement compound, consisting of houses built from debris and trash, it's unclear where a pre-war bunker could have come from in one of these houses. In any case, the only way out of the bunker was feet first. Despite the loss of Station Echo, which the NCR was unaware of, the NCR was informed about the Legion's advance thanks to a spy. Unfortunately, the disarray in the NCR army led to a ranger squad conducting reconnaissance in the south of Searchlight, right around the settlement area. The Legion wiped out the scouts but realized that the element of surprise was lost. Additionally, the Legion kills a group led by Sergeant Astor, patrolling the northern outskirts of Searchlight. Having learned from spies that the NCR is preparing for a battle in the south and is gathering troops and supplies, the Legion sabotages the Mojave outpost by destroying a weapons depot, the Shares Copper farm by destroying food supplies, and Station Oscar by destroying the communication equipment. As a result, the NCR headquarters did not receive data on the fall of Station Echo. In response, the NCR captures a Legion spy in North Vegas, but it's hardly an equal retaliation. The Legion advances further and captures Searchlight Airport, clearing it of red scorpions, as well as Matthews Farm, eliminating the jackals settled there. Most likely by this time the events of the working on the Chain Gang mod should have played out, so perhaps this pack of jackals is just the remnants of the tribe that broke away after OLM Silva's defeat at the west side. The Legion intensively transports slaves and supplies to establish outposts using boats on the Colorado River. A mutiny occurs on one of the boats, and although most of the slaves perish, they manage to sink the boat and kill their guard. Ideally, the leader of the slaves should give another quest related to organizing the rebellion on the farm, which I found out about by digging through the files, but perhaps this quest was cut because the triggers didn't work. The Legion leader at Matthews Farm tries to recruit skilled farmers from the NCR's Shares Copper farm by using their dissatisfaction of conditions they have to work in. They arrange a meeting at the pump station, but the farmers report to the Rangers and they set an ambush for the Legionnaires. The besieged Legionnaires commit suicide. The Legion attempts to hire Marcus Supermutants as potential allies against the NCR. Some Nightkin from Jacobstown join the Legion at the airport for the promise of stealth boys. The Legion needs materials to set up their base, so they reach out to New Vegas Steelworks. Conrad doesn't care who he does business with, but Conrad has a problem. One of the employees, Irish, stole some blueprints, which he wants to sell at an auction in the underground. Although I decided not to consider the underground in the global narrative, I'll still mention their role in this story. The underground doesn't give access to nobodies to the auction. The protagonist needs to do side quests for someone who can put in a good word, and that person is the raider Priest, who is looking for a way to defeat his former boss, Duke. We'll skip a chunk of the story related to Priest's attempt to hire new members of his gang through blackmailing a member of Michael's gang, but the gist is that, gathering some strength and thirsting for revenge against Duke, the surviving members of the Blue Diamond set up an ambush for Duke's patrol. After digging through records, Priest finds Bulldog and convinces her to reveal her commander's hideout. In my playthrough, she got stuck in the textures, so realizing she couldn't move and would die of hunger, she reveals Duke's location. Then there's an attack on a camp, and the player has a choice to kill either the ruthless Duke or the former cannibal Priest. Objectively speaking, Duke's army will be stronger, so to make the agony of decision-making easier, I propose wiping out both gangs to zero. If Priest survives, he'll take his axe and head somewhere else in search of adventures beyond the game zone. The Underground's quest itself was about wanting to establish friendly relations with the Cazadors in Freeside. To get the Cazadors to agree, a series of tasks compensating for the unfavorable positions of the contract needed to be completed. In particular, chemical supplies needed to be arranged from the followers, for which a quest needed to be completed in Vault 22. Also, an assassination of one of the kings by allegedly NCR soldiers had to be done in order to sow discord among factions, ending with the killing of the king himself and Mayor Kieran, which we of course refused to do. It's too huge for a side quest within a side quest. So we cut out the underground. Even Irish has a separate huge chunk of secondary plot tied to robbing the NCR post office, for which you constantly have to change into different clothes like Hitman, gathering information about a special package from various characters. Out of the context of the main plot, it's all cool, but it really ruins the frenetic dynamics of the Legion's lightning-fast front breakthrough. In summary, roughly speaking, the Legion buys the blueprints at the auction and returns them to the factory owner, or simply puts a gladius on the table and says they won't run after any Irishman and stolen newspaper. In any case, the factory sends steel to the airport. The Legion also buys weapons from the gunrunners, but a batch is intercepted by the NCR and sabotaged so that the guns explode upon firing. The Legion finds out that there is a traitor leaking NCR data in Cal-Nev-Ari. It turns out to be Joseph, the former mayor of the town, who realized that an alliance with the Legion was a mistake. Perhaps the author should have sent a couple of female characters into slavery to make Joseph's motivation more obvious and in line with the Cal-Nev-Ari mod, but we can imagine that this was the trigger. In any case, Joseph is caught and executed, being burnt alive in a pile of tires. Quite a gruesome death. The Legion discovers Deckard's camp at the crashed vertibird and destroys it, trying to find information about the colonel's whereabouts. Also, a Legion spy infiltrates Hoover Dam and eliminates another high-ranking military officer. Warned NCR Rangers failed to stop him. The Legion's naivety, thinking that the affiliated settlers and factions with the NCR are just waiting for an opportunity to stab them in the back, is compensated by the NCR's lack of vigilance. Knowing of location of Deckard's base, the Legion plans a final assault. Defeating the Colonel should allow them to consolidate their position in the Mojave south. However, Colonel Deckard is aware of the impending attack and prepares an ambush. The Legion attacks without the support of the super mutants, who were busy fighting each other and were driven away before attacking the slaves. Some Legionnaires died in the attack when their guns exploded. Didn't anyone ever do a test shot? Some Legionnaires along the Centurion managed to break inside, but in the fierce battle that ended in Deckard's office, they perish. The Colonel can celebrate victory and prepare for her own offensive. A counterattack occurs. Legion is driven out from Searchlight Airport, and Cal-Nev-Ari falls under NCR control. Retreating from the Searchlight Cal-Nev-Ari line to Cottonwood, leaving behind Matthew's farm and Station Echo, the Legion sets traps for the advance inside. One of the NCR squads falls into an ambush near Cottonwood, being bombarded with the grenades from the cliffs. The lieutenant and a couple of surviving soldiers have to be evacuated urgently. At this moment, Colonel Deckard comes up with the idea of poisoning Cottonwood with a barrel of radiation, conveniently located in a truck hanging over the base. The NCR opens the truck, the barrels rolled out, and Cottonwood is poisoned with the same weapon they used to poison Searchlight. And with this irony, the mod ends. Overall, I think this is how the war theater in the South should have roughly played out. I have repeatedly said that the war between the NCR and the Legion, as depicted in Fallout New Vegas, is laughable. Minimal significant battles, no swings of advantage from one side to the other, no military drama and tension. Fallout Frontier handled this task much better. In Fallout New Vegas, the NCR simply wipes out the Legion on all fronts, and Nipton seems like some minor incident. I always had a problem with perceiving Fallout New Vegas in this regard, and I absolutely did not feel the level of despair in Forlorn Hope. Therefore, I believe that this mod, despite being quite dispersed into secondary arcs, very powerfully compensates for this missed opportunity. Playing this mod, I feel the tension, I feel that the Legion is advancing, capturing new outposts, that it poses a threat. Finally, the southern direction and Cottonwood are not just some mosquito raiding party, but a serious problem. And the destruction of Cottonwood with radiation is indeed a strategic operation of the NCR, not some comedic sketch where the clumsy courier accidentally finds a lever on the truck and pulls it out of curiosity. After all, a patrol sergeant is not the character who should ask courier to eliminate an entire Legion army if it's not too much trouble for him. That's it for the breakdown of what I consider a pretty solid mod at its core, the Battle for the South. I hope you enjoyed the video and you agree with my version of the story presented. Don't forget to support the project with likes, subscriptions, comments and other activity. It really warms my heart. I hope my videos bring you just as much joy. Remember that I update the map in Google Earth, which I use in my videos and which you can freely download. All the links are in the description. And that's all for today. Don't surrender your cities to the Legion if you don't want to wear skirts or take a rest on tires. And then we can meet again in the Wastelands Wanderers. End of the holotape.